Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Well, the White House made a stunning admission this week. They actually admitted that a decades-old program, the war on drugs, is an abject failure. Now, this is coming from the nation's top drug official. This is Michael Botticelli. He's the White House's director of Office of National Drug Control Policy, and he went on CBS's 60 Minutes on Sunday, proclaiming the war on drugs a failure and calling for reform and a refocus of the drug policy. Now, joining me in studio is David Knight. And David, this has been an issue that has been really a hot topic for you for decades. Actually.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of how it has failed, and he talks about a little bit of the failure. Let's play this clip because they referred to him as a drug czar, and they said, that's not a title you like, is it? Let's hear what he had to say.
Michael Botticelli is the president's new drug czar. Just don't call him that.
It's actually a title that I don't like.
Why?
Because I think it connotes this old war on drug focus to the work that we do. It portrays that we are clinging to kind of failed policies and failed practices in the past.
Are you saying that the way we have waged the war on drugs for more than 40 years has been all wrong?
It has been all wrong.
So, Leanne, you heard him say that they're failed policies and failed practices. I would say, when I look at this, I think it's doing precisely what it was designed to do. Now, he talks about some of the issues. He says it's given us a costly, bloated prison system, but also one that has failed to curtail Americans' drug habits.
Right.
Absolutely, it's had absolutely no effect over 41 years on drug abuse. But that's not its purpose, I think. And when we look at this, we have to say that not only has it not failed to keep people from getting addicted to drugs, not only has it given us a prison system where we've got more people incarcerated, many times more proportionally per population than we have in China or in Russia, these authoritarian regimes. We have more people than any society has ever put into prison, but it's got some other issues too. When we talk about the other problems of prohibition, of course, we've got a corrupted law enforcement in the courts. If you're going to have a war on drugs, you need an army to fight that war. So we've got militarized police. We've got courts that ignore the rule of law, ignored our due process, came up with this fiction that they call civil asset forfeiture, where they don't have to charge you with a crime. They don't have to convict you without punishing you, taking your property. Instead, what they do is they charge the property with being an accessory to the crime.
Wow.
So we see the United States versus $5,000 of cash, or the United States versus a Learjet serial number such and such, not against a person because, you know, cash and Learjets don't have any civil rights.
Right.
And they're ignoring our civil rights when they take our property. That kind of fiction is a product of prohibition. Of course, they're giving a lucrative monopoly to organized crime. And they're also, as a result of that, they're increasing the variety and the intensity of the drugs. We saw this happen with prohibition during alcohol, that the variety and the intensity of the alcohol, as well as the purity. You had a lot of bathtub gin and things that would make people go blind when they use it. We see the same sort of thing happening now. We would not have the meth epidemic if it weren't for drug prohibition. And so all of these things are things that have come out of prohibition. But the fact that we even have somebody that we call the drug czar, that was a sign from the very beginning, this is going in the wrong direction.
Right.
We don't have czars in a free society. And as long as we have a czar in a free society, we're not going to be a free society. Interestingly enough, that term was first used in the media by Joe Biden in 1982, 6 years before they passed the law and Reagan signed it into law that created this office, the National Drug Control Policy Office, as part of the White House. And it was, the first one was William Bennett under George H.W. Bush. So, you know, this has got a long history to it. Now, the interesting thing, too, about this guy is that he's someone who comes from a background of addiction. And so what he's doing is he's trying to push this towards a treatment issue as opposed to a law enforcement issue.
Right.
But he's taking it right up to the edge here, because one of the conditions of this office that he's in control of is that by law, the drug czar must oppose any attempt to legalize drugs. Okay, he must oppose any study or any funding of a study that would show that there's a legitimate use of any of the drugs that are on Schedule 1. How did these drugs get on Schedule 1? And this is what the Republicans need to understand, because by and large, they are the ones who are pushing this war on drugs. Republicans need to understand something that, even though, Leanne, you point out, I've been against this for decades because I've seen what it's done to our law enforcement, to our courts. what it's done to me personally in terms of having to pay to incarcerate people for decades in prison for nonviolent crime. I don't like any of that stuff. I don't like to see our country turned into what it's been turned into with this war on drugs. But something I didn't realize until just about 6 months ago was that this was a UN agenda, like UN Agenda 21. It was created by the UN along with these 4 drug schedules in 1961, 10 years before Richard Nixon declared a war on drugs in 1971 and put it out there along with these 4 schedules copied verbatim from the UN agenda. So conservatives need to understand this program was designed to fail from the very beginning. It was designed to create a militarized, centralized police force. It was designed to subvert the Bill of Rights and the Constitution from the very beginning, and that's precisely what it's done.
Wow, and that's incredible. And so what do you think about his take that, you know, we need to not obviously legalize marijuana? That's putting this wrong idea out there that it's safe, that it's okay. Meanwhile, you look at legalized prescription drugs, which are killing more people than heroin or cocaine or things like that. And these are, being given the impression that these are perfectly safe and they're okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, you know, that's 2 things that he can't do is he can't do any studies to attempt to legalize or to show there's useful stuff of things that are in Schedule 1. And when you're talking about prescription drugs and the FDA, they cannot, they have to resist any drug that's not been approved by the FDA. So you see, we've taken a situation where we had freedom and decisions in our lives, and they have perverted it so that everything is prohibited unless expressly permitted by the FDA.
Right.
And now they're bringing in the other side of that, saying that since you have no control over the medicines that you take and what you do, you have no informed consent, essentially. Now they apply that to vaccines. See, it's the entire spectrum falls into this. You lose your due process of law. You corrupt law enforcement by turning them into thieves, literally highway robbers, taking people's cars or cash on the road without charging them with a crime or finding them guilty. And then you turn people into slaves of the pharmaceutical companies. And we know that there are so many people who die of pharmaceutical use, using it as advertised. You see Chris Christie come out and talk about how he wants a more compassionate approach, essentially saying the same thing this guy's talking about. But of course, they're not going to get rid of the war on drugs. They're not going to get rid of the law enforcement aspect of it. They'll talk about that as being a problem, but they want their cake and they want to eat their cake and have it too. So they're going to keep that there.
Right.
At the same time, they want to add some additional government programs that will involve addiction treatment and that sort of thing. They have, with Obamacare, made everybody get coverage for addiction.
Right.
Again, it's a tax on me. I can control myself without law enforcement. I can control myself by not getting involved with this. I always have my entire life. I don't do drugs. I did alcohol. I don't do marijuana. I don't any of this stuff. But I have to pay for people who are locked up in prison. I resent that. I resent the fact that I have to pay for an insurance policy that covers me for an addiction that I don't ever have to worry about doing because I'm not going to take it. So we come back to this complete government control.
Right. And, you know, not to mention that a lot of times that they're giving people like methadone or something to help them come off of drugs that people end up getting even more addicted to. Those drugs make it out to the street. Parents in their medicine cabinet, their kids can get into the medicine cabinet and then take those things to school, sell them to school. So this is, you know, it's just like sort of a dangerous precedent out there. What are we doing about that? Why is it a plant that's, you know, the #1 thing putting people in prisons? And also, you know, this FDA thing, this government regulating agency saying what is okay and what's not okay. I mean, they okayed Vioxx, which of course had to be taken off the market for killing a lot of people. And of course, we know that right after they decided that, yes, indeed, glyphosate could be a possible carcinogen, the FDA went ahead and improved Dow Syngenta's version of the exact same thing with the Roundup Ready crops. So this is the governmental regulating agency that, of course, should be in control.
And of course, they have to maintain that marijuana has absolutely no legal use, prohibit any studies that would show that it does, because that would mean that it's not a Schedule I drug. They want to maintain that. It's interesting that this article that I'm looking at here, summarizing the CBS 60 Minutes program, it's on attn.com. One of the things they have here, related article, marijuana could literally replace these 5 prescription drugs. Yeah, a lot more than that, but we're not allowed to know that. And I think a lot of what they're doing is really a face-saving effort to try to say, all right, we're going to liberalize things a little bit because they can be shut down at the state level. We've seen it now with 3 states shutting them down. They don't want that genie to get out of the bottle.
Wow. Well, that's incredibly interesting. I know you're going to be actually breaking this down even more tomorrow during the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show. So be sure to tune in to that for this more explosive information, David Knight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stick around. We'll be right back with more Infowars news.
Brain Force is here. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on this the last few months. You probably noticed I've been more crazed, more focused, less brain fog, more energy, more special reports, and it's because of Brain Force.
One of the worst things with most energy products is it's not sustainable, right? You're gonna crash and gonna feel really bad afterwards. This has a bunch of different antioxidants and compounds and polyphenols.
Everybody's on these drugs to knock their brain out because the brain's so fried.
We kept changing this formula over and over and over again until it became sort of a grand puzzle. For example, the L-theanine inside of it, that is activated by the different compounds in the yerba mate that we put inside of it as well. This just increases the compounds you already have.
This is what you're actually designed to run on.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a car will run on one form of junkie gas, but it runs really good on what it's designed for. You will find Brain Force, Survival Shield X2, and other game-changing products at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.